So one of my wonderful Inyu friends, Danny, in the past has told me he's fucking sick and tired of me never covering the games that he wins, only covering the games that he loses. And fortunately for Danny, this SCL, he's actually been winning. It's not something that I'm particularly familiar with. He's actually winning games. And you know what? I decided, hey, let's cover some Danny. Let's cover some other stuff as well from this past week. I actually have a random week 5 game in here too, because Danny and McMeghan right now are the top 2 players in the NU pool based on their records. And so I thought looking at this game between them would actually be pretty cool. But we're going to start off with this game from this past week. And a lot of that is because apparently Danny said in his little post where he talked about his team, he took some inspiration from this team, Scyther HO, from the one that I recorded with. So I thought that was pretty funny. Anyhow, y'all been enjoying the content as of late. I'm going to need to see it. I'm going to need to see 10 new subscribers. All of you, I need to see you line up front and center. And I want to see 100 likes on this video. I know y'all can do it. Just do it, man. Easy work. So, Danny, from what I read in his post, he basically came into this week knowing that Eternally would not expect hyper offense out of him because he's not really known as an HO player. He's in fact known as like a not HO player because he doesn't pilot the teams, in his opinion, very well. So he loads up with this no hazard setting Chinchino team, like I said, very similar to what I brought in a recent NU Live, where you got the tidy up Chinchino, your shift gear Tox, your Eviolite Scyther, you got like DD Flygon, and then you've got, you know, standard bulk up Tauros and Meteor Beam Trigger Diancie. And the cool thing, and this kind of goes into how you need to build this type of HO, is his team has a very clear goal in mind, and that is to beat down steals. So, how does that manifest? Well, all of Diancie, Scyther, Chinchino, Toxtricity do a very good job of just drawing in steel types and forcing in damage on them. And then you can look at the context of like Bronzong specifically, you could throw Flygon in there too. So opening up the game for one of those 4 dudes, Scyther probably being the one you're trying to the most, or maybe Toxtricity. And it's being pretty easy to do. And just generally against the seals too, you've got the Tauros. That mon will just give you an active way to always like threaten real chip on them. You know, you don't want to just have 6 mons walled by steals and then say, oh, but they're going to work together to overwhelm them. Yeah? Is that so? Not always going to be something you can really rely on. So Tauros is something that's nice to have here so that you do have a mon you can rely on to actually do real damage no matter the circumstance. Eternally, meanwhile, brought just a nice little standard balance team. I do think balance is kind of doo-doo in this environment, so I'm not a huge fan of the pick in terms of archetype, but as a balance player myself, I'm always going to try and use it as well, so I don't really blame him, you know? It's honestly hard to comment on the team without saying some of the other features. So it is actually a Spikes Bramblegast, so it's like a spike stacking team, and what I saw from Mr. Django, he posted in our SCL discussion thread, he's not a huge fan of this angle, mostly because he thinks Mienshao is just too good of a spikes abuser. And so this team doesn't really end up having a great way to make use of spikes, and I do find myself agreeing with that. Particularly though when we start seeing some of the sets revealed throughout the battle. So we're gonna press little play. And of course, Danny, playing this game correctly, leads off with this Chinchino, because that's all you ever need to do. Just make sure you deny hazards from going up early, knock the Registeel, and then get some Tail Sap chip off. You don't need to like do 5 million to it, but 40% is honestly a pretty good chip to get on this spawn this early. But what you're trying to do is you're just trying to make sure you get enough damage done to this to where your Scyther's a lot happier long term, maybe even your Diancie or Toxtricity. And as we said too, go Tauros, because that's your mon that actually beats the seals. So he ends up being able to CC, gets a ton of chip off on this Vaporeon, and then gets popped by Alluring Voice, which I thought was really funny. Naturally, you may wonder why he has Alluring Voice on Vaporeon when he's got a Bramblegast, which in theory counters Tauros. The reason is just the Bramblegast does not have a grass move. It's Nightshade, Spikes, Strength Sap, Rapid Spin, so not really good at beating Tauros down. I will admit, seeing Alluring Voice here does make me wonder if it's Tera Fairy on the Vaporeon. If it was, I probably would be burning Tera here instead of taking the kill. I know it's tough because you do want to get rid of that mon. One, it's just kind of dangerous because it's a strong mon, but 2, you could have wished on this turn instead and then killed the next turn, or even just thrown off a Scald, because there's not really anything that switches into Scald on that turn very well. And then you have your Vaporeon getting a lot of HP back regardless. Instead, he just dies to Flygon on the follow-up turn with EQ. And then he has to go Bramblegast here on this turn. Which, you know, as you see here, it actually ends up being revealed this is Adamant Flygon. So something I used to use a little bit in the past that Mr. Joey would always yell at me for, because he's like, man, I'm tired of losing these speed ties because they're not even speed ties. I'm just slower at +1. But I remember eternally commenting how he was really surprised at how much damage his Bramble was taking from like EQ and Scale Shot. There, you'll see damage thrown off later. Just because, yeah, I mean, hey, it is a Adamant Flygon instead, so that would have done a lot less, of course, if it's Jolly. And you do see the Bramble get back up to full here. There is a, I think it's right here, yeah, Eternally sets up a Spike. I remember kind of being confused by this, because I'm like, just take your kill on the Flygon. And then go Scrafty, which obviously is just going to also take some chip here. My guess on the thought process behind letting Bramble be the one to die, and then Scrafty comes out to revenge kill, instead of just having Bramble revenge kill. I was thinking maybe it's because you don't want Toxtricity to get super free setup, but or like even Scyther would be able to come out versus Bramble. The problem is, one, Scyther can still come out versus Scrafty, so I don't really think that would be it. I mean, maybe Deancey you're scared of coming out, but it would come out here too. Toxtricity, I feel like if that, you probably would be scared of that mon because you're still able to check Toxed, kind of, sort of. At least I think you can, looking at the team here. It's not running you over immediately, and if you force a Tera Normal out of it too, Scrafty can Revenge Kill with Drain Punch. Maybe you end up with the same sequence, but I think just taking your kill with this mon was probably a little bit better, or trying to even sap another time just to bother this. Like, you still have 13 saps, right? You're not gonna outstall the DDs, but you still have plenty of turns to try and mess around with Danny. I just don't think that this sequence is very good, because here's the problem. Mr. Scyther comes out now. Shoutouts to him. A very free Swords Dance. You don't care about this knot because you're EV Light, so you take that very, very nicely. And you still don't care, so you actually get to just Trailblaze up. Now, what I really liked here too, Danny, knowing that probably the only thing you really care about this mon doing is like throwing off a T-Wave. But regardless of that, what move is it going to use? Heavy Slam. So either T-Wave or Heavy Slam's coming. You cover that with Tera Electric very nicely. Now you're +2. Nothing on this team can Revenge Kill you. So Scrafty gets to be killed by Trailblaze because you don't want to CC and then let First Impression kill you. Then no First Impression came out. I thought this was Banded Flygon on the team. First Impression doesn't kill for what it's worth. If Eternally still did have his Tera around, Tera Bug First Impression does Revenge Kill from this range. Though it would also let Deancey come out for free and set up, so I'm really not too sure that it's a path you want to take. It could be, I was thinking maybe it's Scarf Flygon and then Boots Monkey, which is fine. I just think that team really does not take advantage of spikes well enough at all. So yeah, I mean, if he is banded and I'm just, again, unaware of what he's running, then I think you always went for First Impression there and just tried to crit. And you just have to play it out like that. I think at least, I remember seeing someone say that on this turn, Eternally needed to hard Monkey Dory. Assuming it's Scarf, or even Boots for what it's worth. So it would be at full with an Eviolite, but they were saying go hard Monkey Dory and threaten, I guess, damage with Sludge Wave there. Or even maybe threaten Trick if it's Scarf. Because then in that case, you force it to lock into, like, I don't know, do a Wing Beat. Which I don't actually think matters for you, because Registeel's going to come out and not be able to really touch it still, right? So I'm not really too sure that it was an optimal way at this point to play around the Scyther. I think once he got the chip on Registeel and also revealed the Tera Electric, it was always going to be kind of tough for this to really feel like a great answer. So long as you got rid of some like annoying possibilities like Eternaly's Tera, for example. So very nice win by Danny. And then we get this game. And I had been talking about, and I may have been talking with myself because I don't always post my thoughts. But I've been thinking for every week, I'm like, why does no one bring Ditto into McMeghan? Because he's brought cheese every week except 1 week. It's been Hyper Offense and Stall every other week leading up to this. I think even including week 6, by the way, which we have the game. More Stall. I was thinking, like, why is he not getting Dittoed more? Because Ditto is how you answer this type of building. Whether it's Stall or Hyper Offense, it's a great counter Pokemon to each. Now, there are hyper offenses that can beat Ditto, like Terrain, for example, but it's still good in the general archetype, and Stall just doesn't like Ditto because it can keep copying your power points, so it becomes a lot harder to, well, stall. So I really like seeing the Ditto here. I thought it was just a good call into someone that has been bringing a ton of Dittoable teams. And he's also got this Porygon too, which is kind of cool. The idea being that in case you're scared of, like, again, cheese, right? Oricorio Pom Pom is a very possible Pokemon to come. And so P2 is going to be able to trace the Dancer, and if Pom Pom tries to set up, you get to set up alongside it. So it's actually a pretty interesting interaction. Of course, too, if it's like Revelation Dance instead of Taunt, you get to cover those as well. You'll throw off a Rev Dance in return, and then you also have Ice Beam going off at the same time. Pom Pom just cannot really deal with you too well. Now, I've seen some people say they think Pom Pom should win the exchange. I won't personally pretend to know how the exchange works, but my assumption is if people are willing to call this one an answer to Pom Pom, there's probably been some testing done on how the sequences play out, and P2 should be winning them, so there's that. And overall, too, I do like just the angles. Now, some of these sets, I say it, preview, are not going to be the sets used, just bear with me. I do also like the idea of, like, Flygon Tauros, just because if you're scared of HO, you potentially have, like, First Impression on Flygon, and it just Intimidate Tauros is generally pretty good at covering a lot of the HO threats. It's just a good buffer. Meanwhile, McMeghan's team, I'll be real, when I first loaded into the game, I thought he was using Sun, because I saw Charizard and a Lilligant. It's not Sun. It's actually kind of like what Danny brought here. It is a Chinchino HO, where you just try and keep hazards off and support Pokemon like Setup Zard, and it ends up being Focus Sash on the Iron Thorns. So it's a cool idea. I'm just not sure about the setup. I feel like you probably can get a more optimal 6. Beautiful pivot here from not Eternally. Yeah, Danny, I'm sorry, you're just Eternally now to me. Beautiful pivot, though, by Danny on the Headlong Rush. And here he reveals he specs Flygon. Burns with Fire Blast as well, and the Torterra is just no longer a threat. Now, for what it's worth, of course, had he not gotten the burn, he would have, and then he chose to just sack this next turn. Ditto would have gotten to come out and just copy. So, I mean, you be the judge if you really love that. Regardless, ends up being made up for by McMeghan immediately. He dodges a Fire Blast and then picks off the Flygon with Knock into Sucker, as now Tauros is going to come out here. Immediately just go for Raging Bull and kill this Charizard, which I thought was hilarious. Only to let Miss Persephone come back out. And I guess McMeghan here is scouting to see what the Tauros set could be, trying to see if he's Scarf or not by going back to Bombardier. Ends up being that Danny is just Bulk Up, as he's revealed double Water Move CC. So now the Chinchino tries to do something. It can't. It just dies to Raging Bull into Aqua Jet. And yeah, this is what we call the Danny diff. The Danny diff was immense this battle, because now Persephone comes out. Good Tera. That way you do not die to CC into, well, okay, you wouldn't even die to CC into Jet, but you don't take 80 from CC. But it doesn't end up mattering. Crit on Glober is a little annoying, but ultimately it's not impactful enough, because Ditto just comes out, copies that speed boost, and then gets to 2x Giga Drain the Thorns, as McMeghan tries to go for a DD just in case Danny disconnects. But Danny did not disconnect, and he has slain McMeghan. Now, since then, McMeghan had to play this game. Versus Elias side, this was a highlight matchup coming into the week, because both players were, all of Danny, Elias, and McMeghan were 4-1 coming into week 6. So this was a highlight matchup, because it's 2 people tied for first. And Elias, of course, if you know anything about Elias, he's actually kind of similar to McMeghan in terms of the team styles he's been bringing this tournament. It's pretty much been, it's not hard stall from Elias, but it's these very bulky teams that are generally reliant on like one offensive Pokemon to do anything. Or it's hyper offense, like he brought Rain week 1. So this team, I think, actually ends up being a really good call for McMeghan. I'm not sure about Duosion as a Pokemon, mind you, but I think in terms of just the archetype, I think it's just a very smart pick. Ditto, once again, it's going to cover you very well versus HO. It at least gives you that extra insurance, right? Gastro, I mean, Elias has brought Rain, so Gastro's a pretty good Rain matchup. Even Avalugg is not the worst for Rain, because it helps check Overquill, which, speaking of, here's an Overquill for you. And then, you just generally are gonna say, hey, look, I'm just better than you. Like, I feel like there's part of it is just egoing, but that's not a bad thing. I think the stall just makes a lot of sense for this matchup. And I mean, yeah, I respect the bring. It ends up loading very nicely into this HO from Elias. The idea I feel like Elias has to go for here is just hoping that, like, some combo of Kilo, Meloetta, Diancie can win for you. Because when you see Kilo on these HOs, Sub Endeavor has been the most common set, and it does actually reveal to be Sub Endeavor as well this battle. But otherwise, I mean, Meloetta can potentially put some pressure on Zong and I guess even Duosian. Maybe that opens something up for Diancie, because keep in mind, offensive Trick Room Diancie is one of the ways you cover HO against Ditto. Because, well, Ditto copies your Diancie. If I'm under Trick Room, you're just... You do not go first. You have that scarf making you too fast. So that's probably like the one angle I could see maybe Elias winning. It's just a very specific route, and it's going to require pretty perfect play, because this team from McMeghan is pretty durable with the, I'm guessing this is regen. Actually, I know it's regen because I see it take damage in the battle. So you got the double regen core. Recovery. Just tough. So Quill led. Quill lead is pretty fair because you can always throw off a gunk shot and fish for a poison. And his miss does end up sucking just because you'll actually see later this gets a gunk shot poison on the Gastrodon. So had you got it here earlier, it's just, you know, it's generically nice to have that extra pressure. Mienshao comes out after Taunt, which I wasn't really sure about. I think you just always spike immediately because it's not like you care about Gastro. Maybe he's scared of it being double hazards. So there's that. And yeah, there's what I'll say. This is regen because you see the spike chip there. Quill now has to come out. And yeah, getting nothing out of turn 1 you can already see is kind of bad because Quill is almost dead to a Nightshade. It almost just got 1v1 by Duosian. Not exactly great to see. But he will get the poison here, which is solid because now you get to switch into your Kilowattrel. If he goes for Earth Power, you block that. If he recovers, well, you get a free turn. And we see one sub, I think just expecting maybe a switch there because you aren't trying to get Air Slash flinched down. But then we see here, I mean, Elias just beats the Gastrodon. And like I said, this is what I was talking about with, if you got the Gunk Shot poison a little earlier, you probably don't have to give as much HP on your Quill, and then Kilo would have still been able to 1v1. So, a little unfortunate for Elias in that regard. But then the Shao U-turns into Zong, and this is the problem with Diancie in the current meta. You just don't do anything to Zong. And he even reveals too, he's Flash Cannon. He's taking absolutely zero chances against any of the fairies in the tier that try to do something to Zong, whether it's like a Scream Tail, a Diancie, a Sylveon, or what have you. Now, I thought that was actually kind of interesting. He does end up scouting for the Endeavor. Interesting as in, hey, he did it. Good. As the Kilo Endeavors onto the Shao, which isn't really that important because it is Regenerator, so it's kind of just chill. I do like the double Endeavor here, though. I called it as I was watching the replay. I was like, please Endeavor again. So, good play. As the Kilo now, he actually just ends up air slashing again as Diancie switches. I think he was trying to prevent the Kilo double there actually too. Because if you think Zong's coming out, yeah, double back to Kilo. And you threaten an Endeavor. Now, probably could have still gone to like Duosian instead. And it would have been a bit of a nuisance. But not too big a deal, I guess. Meloetta now comes out here. You see the Hyper Voice, get your Throat Spray, which is a pretty cool set. And this is kind of too what I was talking about. With maybe the path would be Meloetta, Kilo, Diancie try to overwhelm the Zong, and then maybe OTR Diancie could win at the end, because you see Duosian come out here, take 1,000,000 from the Shadow Ball. So, I mean, you think Zong wouldn't also take 1,000,000? This is kind of where I'm talking about, like, maybe if you had been able to force the chip on the Zong instead, maybe there's a path, but now, of course, you're just not going to see any path manifest, because, like, Diancie can't beat this. It would have to be Tera Blast Fire, and as we can see, Elias is saving his Tera type for the next game. He does try and get as much chip off on the Zong as he can, but it's just not going to end up mattering. He cannot win this game long term, as this actually ends up also revealing its Calm Mind, which is pretty cool. You don't see Calm Mind with dual stabs really like this. Normally, the only Calm Mind Zong set you'll see is like the stored power stuff. So, fun little set. Tera Poison to try to beat Legion. Legion, unfortunately, is a little strong. So it is going to be able to easily two-shot with Phantom Force, but he switches into Lug. And Lug will just long-term 1v1 this with ease. Legion cannot beat it. And since it's OTR Diancie, the Lug ends up being faster. body presses. So there you go, McMeghan. You get a little win feature too, man. Next game up, iito versus 3D's Nuts. And 3D bringing another type of hazard stacking core. I do think that Raja plus Gligar is a pretty intuitive way to build out style. Because, one, they have pretty decent defensive synergy. Vapo's like one of the freest monsters to throw alongside them if you're trying to cover what weaknesses you don't have, which is mostly to water and fire. And then you've got double knock just built into your mons with both Gligar and Raja being able to run it really easily. You don't have to go knock on Gligar. I've seen a couple variants where like Gligar sometimes is spike, EQ, you turn toxic, or maybe it's acro on there. But if you want to fit knock, it is pretty easy. iito brought Hail, which you don't see much at all. It's actually the first time we've seen it in this tournament. I liked Hail months ago. I haven't really seen it since then. I haven't used it myself. So I was pretty interested in it. And I think that this is a very nice way to build it out. If I think back to the version of Hail that I was using, I remember it had like a Thunderous with Weather Ball. So Kilo fits the mold just as well. You get Weather Ball still. Very nice speed control too for when your weather is not active. So it's going to help maintain an advantage for you against a generally kind of slow team. It's not slow, but you got Decid. One of these will be... It ends up being Scarf Tox. You end up seeing that revealed through the game based on damage it's doing. You know, it's on specs, I guess I could say. I don't know if Scarf's ever confirmed. But I would say with Shao revealing Life Orb at a point, I think at least it reveals Life Orb, doesn't it? I swear it reveals Life Orb. It should be Life Orb on this type of team anyway, right? Because you got the double hazards. Or, not even that, you got Spikes. I think Life Orb Shao is just like the best abuser of Spikes imaginable, so... That's kind of where my mind's at with all of this. Anyhow, Scyther's scary. There's not really a natural counterplay on the team to a +2 Scyther, so much of this game is just going to be, if you can, set as many hazards as possible. And then try to limit the setup chance for Scyther. That's really the most I would be able to glean from this. I think Deki Dewey is actually pretty decent at winning as well. SD Decid has a very nice matchup just because there's no Dark Resist to be found. But that does not make it an easy matchup. So, Obama comes out, and you're about to see Obama still throughout this battle. Honestly, get way more damage than it's owed the right to. I do like the knock here just to make sure you get rid of Icy Rock, because long term it's probably better for you that this mon does not have a rock. Just making sure that it doesn't have as many turns to support the two demons in the back. It's always good. Vapo too is going to be able to pivot in on a predicted Earth Power. Protect to waste another turn, and then throw up a Wish, because you can just Wish Tech. This mon is ever two-shotting you. So you're feeling pretty good about this. As Kilo now will come out. You do have plenty of mons you can switch to here. You go Raj again if you want. You can go Gligar even if you're just going to predict the Volt. Though Gligar in this type of team is not a long-term check, because Weather Ball. So, Decid expertly blocking the spin here, and then Shao comes out. And Shao just dies to Triple Axle because this is Life Orb, I think, right? No, it's... Why am I saying Life Orb? It has Boots revealed. It's just that freaking Sand Slash is so strong. So Shao just straight up getting to do nothing at all. Very OP Pokemon. And now we do see that the rocks get spun away. Very unfortunate if you are 3D. As you do, like I said, you want as many hazards as possible. Just to limit this fat, obese slob in the back. Vapo now just gets to trade down the pert a little bit. Obama comes out again to set the weather. You can only, like, really stay in so many turns with this guy. Trying to protect stall out weather. As now Mr. Digital Dash has entered the fray. And Swampy! So this also what I mean. I think eventually we see why I was so sure it was Scarf. Because it takes Rock's Chip. And then again, Vapo's gonna do some stalling, yada yada yada. Gligar came out. Raj sack eventually. And then yeah, you see Boom Burst here. That's not Specs Chip. And it took Rock's Chip. Like, Scarf's the only item that makes any sense, right? So, all I have to say, Decid now comes out. And unfortunately for 3D, Moby Dick has entered the fray. And we do see a double SD on here, but then it ends up being Ice Shard, which is honestly just kind of bad luck if you're 3D, I would say. Because on Snow, I wouldn't really ever anticipate seeing Ice Shards to Titan. I would think you're just going for like Ice Spinner, Liquidation, Knockoff, or, you know, maybe throw EQ or Play Rough in there. Just kind of throwing out other coverage moves. Shard's a little bit exotic, but if you don't want to rely too much on the snow, then I totally get it. Just to make sure that you always have this move to use once your weather goes down. And as you can see too, it ended up being very important because Mr. Obama Snow died. So you didn't have the snow for as long. It's not even that it died, it's that it lost its rock, so the snow went away quicker. So iito subs in, ends up winning a game of Inu. Pretty nicely done all around by him. I thought this was just a cool team to see. I might even yoink this. We'll see. And in our last game, Mr. PhD BJ versus Watashi. Alright, sorry for the interruption. The person at the door did not want to go away. Anyhow, Watashi versus Mr. PhD BJ. Two very similar teams here, both with the idea of, hey, Mienshao is a pretty good Pokemon right now. What if we use Mienshao? Both teams, the similarities are just so funny too. So you got two Xiaos. I think they're both Life Orb throughout the battle. We'll have to see. But then you got, no wait, this one's not, I remember. But you got two niche steel types. You got Worm on one side, a Alola on the other. Two water types, two Flygons, two Incineroars, and then two fighting checks. Look at that. It's literally the same team. Nah, but it's very funny. Both Xiaos in this game look pretty strong. And part of it depends on the set that Mr. PhD BJ has. Because if the Florges is like defensive, then I think it's not the worst answer to Flygon. To Mienshao long term, you're still getting pressured by a U-turn, and if hazards are up with knock support, it get a little annoying. But the mod has recovery, so it should be okay. Plus, I'm not really worried, honestly, if I'm a Florges versus this team. There's not a lot that comes in and just, dominates the matchup. So I do feel like long-term it should be a pretty decent check, and of course, you're going to have plenty of defensive Teras as well to match up versus Mr. Weasel. I would actually say that PhD's Mienshao is a lot scarier. Just like the last time Watashi, I think he actually did lose to Mienshao in one of the videos we did. Vapo could easily Tera defensively. You also have Plume, but Plume just always has to be cautious of like Axel or Ice Spinner if they're present. Plus, the issue with Plume here, I do like this little wrinkle for the team. You've got Tentacruel, so Liquid Ooze Tenta is always going to be a threat. If rocks are up, and this is forced to actually take a chip, and Xiao's able to like freely get some attacks off without getting punished by Effect Spore, it's going to be really hard for this mon to find recovery that is not passed to it by the Vaporeon. So that's going to be something to keep an eye out on. Naturally, Flygon is annoying because you have a full counter in Earthworm, but you do get U-turned on. And constantly having to see turns potentially, like Vaporeon if it's passing wishes, or Xiao if it's just going to CC stuff. That's annoying. I mean, there's no other way to put it. That is annoying. So we will see exactly how PhD tries to navigate around that. We see Florg led with because, it's a good mon. Florg actually led with because we end up learning it's Scarf at a point. So, naturally it's got potential shock factor on one of these two if you just end up thinking. Maybe not on Xiao because it is Scarf on this team. Flygon, if it was Scarf, it may try to just like U-turn out and not really reveal a ton either, which could be, decent. I think regardless, Florg is probably not getting the shot kill unless it's Xiao that's led with. Because Xiao might try to U-turn, And if, say it was Life Orb on the team, for example, right? Life Orb here, Scarf on the Flygon. That would be a very good route. Or even a Flygon, Scarf Xiao like we know it is, and then Flygon stays in on turn 1. And then gets smacked by the Moonblast. So that's just kind of little ways that you can see a lead manifest early. Very nice knock here. Not worried about the body press, which would have smoked your pack. And honestly, if body press had been used here, I don't know if this dies. It definitely takes a million. But had PhD just gone for body press instead of rocking, he'd be in an insane spot. Not because Florg just outright wins, but like we talked about, I feel like this Plume is pretty exploitable. So you get even if it's just chipped enough to where Moonblast kills it from Florges, you have such a good matchup. I don't blame him for rocking. I would expect to switch. You've got multiple mons that switch into Worm on your team pretty well. But he stays in. If you see a Balloon Tentacruel, just gives you a little bit of an extra, bit of insurance versus Flygon, essentially. And then we do see Flygon double back in as Tentacruel spins. Now he is fast. You do see a hard switch, because if you still don't know what this thing's item is. So if he's Scarf, you don't want him getting to U-turn and break your balloon for free. So just a hard switch. And then, of course, you're seeing, too, what I was talking about earlier, where there's, like, the momentum game from Flygon is very, very real and kind of hard to deal with. Now here at PhD, again, it's just a matter of you're looking for positioning. This positioning here is still not great because you don't want to lose your item. So we do see, like, talking about, this did have flips. So you don't go for it versus this, because if they're scarfing you, lose your item for no reason. So for a while now, as we often get in these recap videos, you're going to see the same damn switches made like 40 times in a row. I think here we actually see this, like, the true reveal. Florg was scarfed the whole time. And tricking away here, long term, kind of ends up being shown to maybe not be the right play. I think tricking this is great, by the way. I think this Vaporeon is just an absolute bother for the team, because is it really going to stay in versus Tentacruel and let you try and get a poison off? This ends up having Toxic. And then if it wants to be the mon that defensively Tera's, it probably just checks the Mienshao just fine too. It's odd. I think getting the trick off here was really nice, and Florg is probably going to be what switches into this a lot anyway. But it is hard to say that it's hard for me to say that this did not end up giving him some headaches for the long term in dealing with the Flygon. So, for now, we see Worm come out versus Slash. Again, this is really where you see just this, like, switch sequence keep playing out, where rocks go up, this goes off a Scald, Florgus comes out, Slash comes back out, this can throw off a Moonblast, and Worm comes back out, this goes for a spin, switches back to Vapo, rocks go up, Florgus comes out on the Scald. This time, though, a double Scald, knowing, honestly, maybe expecting Synth, if anything, just wanting to say, hey, take a little more chip, feel that pressure. But then he, of course, goes for the switch here, because, hey, the sequence can't be broken. Trick here, by the way, I think is just a misclick. It's either a misclick from him, and he meant to, like, I don't know, maybe Moonblast, predicting a spin, or switch. Hard to misclick that, but I honestly wouldn't be shocked. Alternatively, maybe he wanted his Scarf back. I just feel like you keep the Scarf on the Vaporeon this game. The only thing I could say is maybe he'd rather have the Scarf thrown on this instead. Or maybe he thinks that he needs the Scarf to contest one of these two better. I'm sure if I read the NU Discord, I'll probably be able to find from him what went on. But yeah, Trick was used there for sure. Now, once again, we are in a simulation. Just the same things happen all the time. Spike goes up this time, though, instead of spin, because he spun the previous turn. Rock's now back up. As now we see the trading of the Incineroars here. U-turn, bringing out the Mienshao, and this is why Mienshao is still not, like, objectively broken. CC from Scarfshell would not have even OHKO'd Incineroar, which I think is hilarious. Tera's still good to do here, because this way you actually live the recoil instead of dying. So that's cool. And we also see here, Flygon finally revealing it's not Scarf. And this is why it would have been so good to have your Scarf still on the Florgus, though. Because, yeah, now this mon, I mean, with Worm getting as low as it has, it's actually a bit scary. Not really a mon that's going to give you a lot of leeway to mess around with. So, Worm does throw off a body press, and it does 1,000,000, mind you. So, Flygon, it's not like this mon is flourishing in high health or anything. It's just, it's getting more and more room to do stuff you probably don't feel like having it do. So having some on the Plume, I thought it'd be funny if he heavy slammed again to get momentum while still forcing chip. But this is an objectively smarter line, because this way, you preserve the Earthworm as a sack later on. And also, if this Plume tried to recover, it would have just taken damage anyway off of your Liquid Ooze. So, my bad, but I thought it would have been a fun play. And see, look, now you get to sack the Worm here, get a free switch into your Mienshao. And unlike Watashi, we do see BJ actually scout out for the defensive Tera from the Incineroar. So unlike the latter, I'm noticing SCL players do really like to value their Incineroar, which I'm very happy for. So U-turn scouts out the Tera properly. BJ's Incineroar easily lives the Blitz, but does die to the follow-up knock. So now Shao's back out, goes for a knock, and it hasn't been getting caught by the Effect Spore, but not wanting to test his luck, he just, again, he can go Tentacruel and just always threaten Liquid Ooze. So this can't ever actually recover, and it's almost dead now to the hazards too, which is pretty nice. So here we see a little bit of trading damage with Tenta. Vapo comes out here. Scarf Vapo. You're gonna see eventually, by the way, there's something sinister going on here. It does end up scouting out for a potential toxic there, which I thought was really smart. And in here, I thought that spin was wild. Definitely expecting just hard Vaporeon, not wanting to let Incineroar take any damage. Instead, he just ends up spin blocking and getting Flygon back in. And it's kind of the beginning of the end, I would argue, for our protagonist here. He does go Florges to block a Scale. Instead, just gets Q'd. To block a Scale, I say, by the way. Scale Shot was probably never getting used, but... Again, he could have Scale Shot predicting the Flygon, so it was a 50-50. Shout's gonna be able to outspeed this now. Pick it off. Plume just ends up being the sacrifice as... Yeah, so why is this faster? This is what I meant. This is also why tricking the Scarf ends up being kind of bad. This just outspeeds the Xiao? Now, remember, Choice Scarf is 1.5 times to your speed, not 2 times to your speed. So what, is this max speed Vaporeon? This thing was not some, like, normal Wish Pass, I don't think. This might have been, like, sub-CM. Which, max speed, max HP, maybe? I saw this, though, when I watched the replay. I had to, like, go back a turn to make sure I saw what I saw. Oh my god, I thought that was so funny, though. I'm just like, wait, what? Is this guy just straight up max speed Vapo? And he does get an immediate burn, too, which is pretty terrible. Because had he not, there honestly was a pretty high chance that Mr. BJ was going to win. EQ would have been able to kill the Incin there. And then, of course, Sandslash comes out here. It would have surely died to this EQ. Unfortunately, he's going to lose this game, though. And I just think that random Vapo speed costing the entire battle, because it did get tricked the Scarf, was crazy. Now, like we said, it probably was something like sub-CM if it was this fast. Maybe Calm Mind 3 attacks. It's just kind of amazing it never revealed any other attack. But I guess versus this kind of team, you don't have to. You can Scald freely the whole time. But wow. What looked like a kind of innocuous trick, and like I said, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it necessarily beyond... You could argue, hey, maybe you want to have the Scarf later. It ends up costing them. But I hope y'all enjoyed. Very fun to look at some of these replays. I know I said in yesterday's video I wasn't going to go over this week, but then I looked at the games again and I was like, for the most part, I actually do vibe with these games. So, getting me all that coverage. Also, I tried laddering today and I couldn't find games. And I was like, you know what? Monday is a day off for me, so I won't worry about it. Catch y'all on the flip side, though. Peace. I didn't click stop. Now, I will catch you on the flip side. Peace.